I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Good evening. There are protests in New York against police procedure and unhappiness with the transparency of the grand jury process. But that is democracy. That is governance. We're going to a part of the world where that is an aspiration, a dream, a hope for millions of people, the Middle East. Right now, there are rolling civil wars throughout the Middle East. There are very hot ones where the U.S. is involved with high-performance aircraft and Iranians are involved with high-performance aircraft. That's the ISIS war. And there are more difficult-to-see wars, civil wars, and factions lining up to be against or for other factions. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of President, Major American Jewish Organizations, joins me. We're going to start in an unusual capital because there's no war fighting in it, which is not regular for the Middle East these days. This is Amman, the capital of Jordan, a state that is at peace and yet is in the crosshairs of the Islamic State. You could say al-Nusra as well. Certainly the Syrian regime is no friend of the king in Amman. And al-Qaeda over the years has operated freely. There's also the Muslim Brother aspect. So what we have are all the competing poisons in one place, but the state is at peace right now. We learn from a blog just put up at the Washington Institute by David Schenker of the Washington Institute, the Alcian Fellow and Director of the Program on Arab Politics, who joins us. David, I understand you've just come back from the Middle East, from Amman and Beirut. We start with Amman. Not only the king's fate, but the people of Jordan. Are they feeling under pressure? Do they feel the risk of the Islamic State war to the north? Good evening to you.
Good evening. Yeah, there's a remarkable amount of pressure, economic pressure, pressure from Islamic fundamentalists, ISIS, Jabhat al-Nusra. There's been 300 arrests in recent weeks in Jordan. So they're really feeling they have 1 million Syrian refugees and a population of 6.47 million people. It is remarkably tense. On the other hand, they're doing a lot better than you think they would be doing, given what's happening in Syria and Iraq and in Jerusalem, frankly. This is a wonderfully resilient place. They just celebrated their 20-year anniversary of the peace treaty with Israel.
I welcome Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations. Malcolm, good evening to you.
Good evening, John, and good evening to you, David. But you have noted, as have others, the number of Jordanians who are fighting in Syria, who have joined the forces in Syria. And is this not a reflection of where the young people in Jordan, the appeal of some of the Salafist, jihadist movements, and to what degree does the presence of this overwhelming number for a small country of refugees further incite the population?
Well, that's a good question, Malcolm. Listen, since 1946, Jordan has not been economically solvent, right? This has been a debtor state since day one, and it's just made more difficult by the million additional refugees that they have living in the kingdom. Jordan is on the border with Syria. They have an estimated 2,500 foreign fighters fighting right now in Syria. They've had 250 or 300 martyrs. People have died fighting. Most of them for Jabhat al-Nusra, the al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria, but some of them also for Daesh, ISIS, the Islamic State, and that is certainly a worrisome development for Jordan. When I was in Jordan, I went down to Amman, a town about 3 hours from the capital to the south, and you could see Daesh, ISIS graffiti, pro-ISIS graffiti. They've had a couple pro-ISIS demonstrations down there, and it's hard to ferret out whether this is a demonstration of opposition to the monarchy or a real desire for an Islamic state.
Puzzle about Jordan, because it's made up predominantly of Palestinians, right, Malcolm? Refugees from the wars of 30 years ago. Are they feeling at this point that they are Jordanian? Are they going to fight for the state, or are they standing back passively?
So the Palestinians have not, by and large, come out and protested since the beginning of the so-called Arab Spring, since 2011, and part of that is fear that the Jordanian intelligence and the military would come down on them like a ton of bricks. But they have not been protesting, and most of them have Jordanian citizenship and are very pleased to be residents of the kingdom. It's while it's not by any stretch of the imagination a free democratic state, it is better than most any other Arab country, and they're very pleased to live there. They are pleased to live there. But on the other hand, many of these Palestinians are part of that 2,500 core of foreign fighters from Jordan who are now participating in the jihad in Syria.
When I met King Abdullah last time he was in Washington, he was rather critical, I should say, and the relationship, based on his comments, is tense, though America has been a patron, and as you said, because of the economic needs, other needs, strategic importance, America continues to assist very generously Jordan. What was the agenda this time? What did each side want out of the meeting?
Well, it's unclear what the king is going to ask for. He's meeting with the president tomorrow.
Right.
Jordan got $1 billion from the United States last year between military and economic assistance. It's a pretty generous donation from the United States, and I think they're going to do better next year. I think they really have to talk about what's going to happen going forward, whether the United States is going to, work with the Turks to establish a no-fly zone in the north, a safe zone, what the impact of that will be, perhaps on the south and on Jordan, what the up-tempo of the training of moderate Syrian opposition, both in Jordan and Saudi Arabia, and inserting these guys back into Syria, what that will mean for Jordan. I think that's an important discussion to have right now because, of course, Assad can decide to have an offensive in the south and push a couple 100,000 more Syrians into Jordan.
We need to go to Lebanon, Malcolm.
Quickly, could you tell us? I know you were in Lebanon. We don't know understand why, but what is your sense of the situation in Tripoli, which you must have been kidnapped to visit? But what is your sense there of the
Tripoli
civil war
is overrun. Tripoli's overrun with internecine warfare and gangster behavior,
and Sunni Shiite conflict, etc.
Yeah, Sunni Shiite conflict. I mean, you're seeing the fault line in Lebanon, right? There's already a problem because Hezbollah, the Shiite militia belonging to Iran, is fighting on behalf of Assad in Syria, and you have Sunnis who are disgruntled. But there is the dividing line in Tripoli, which is, Baba Tabana, which is a Sunni neighborhood, which has sent many dozen martyrs to die in the fight against Assad in Syria, bordering on a place called Jebel Musan, which is an Alawite neighborhood. And if you go to this Alawite neighborhood, you'll see posters of Bashar Assad and Hafiz Assad, the president of Syria. And these neighborhoods are separated by one street and about 2,000 officers from the Lebanese armed forces. It's practically a war zone, and every Friday they open fire on one neighborhood to the other. But fortunately, I went up there on a Wednesday.
Wait. We want to underline this because David's being very flip here, Malcolm. You went on a Wednesday because you know the gunfire is on Friday. Is that what you just said, David?
Essentially.
Why, you didn't want to see the gunfire?
What is there, a clock that strikes 1 and all of a sudden they start shooting and then they go back?
Well, it's not quite that predictable, but the army is there in great numbers. In fact, there's no barracks for them, and they're sleeping in the Tripoli soccer stadium. But they're on duty all the time, trying to separate these two neighborhoods. And of course, in this neighborhood, in the Sunni neighborhood, you can see in the middle of the street the flags for ISIS flying. There's a great support for the Sunni militias, terrorist groups, anybody who is fighting Assad in Syria. And of course, next door, in the next neighborhood over, it's Alawites, and they're separated by, really by about 15, 20 yards. If
it wasn't tragic and profound, it would be the Hatfields and the McCoys. David Schenker, just back from Jordan and Lebanon. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations. I feel real good about the democracy of the United States. This is John Batchelor.